My man, Jhead, what's going on, brother?
What's up, Jhead? How you doing, brother?
Oh, I can't complain. I'm a little bit obviously disheartened after watching that game a little bit.
Yeah.
But wanted to give you a call, and I'm glad you gave me a call so that we could kind of talk through. I know that a lot of people want to fire Gus and kind of say, give the pros and cons as to what a move would be like. I don't even think the game's really worth discussing because A&M has basically ran it down our throat. That's the worst our defensive line, I think, has played this year to this point, even though Tennessee was bad. But we just lacked physicality in this game. I mean, we got flat whipped up front, and that's something that's got to get fixed regardless of who the head coach is moving forward.
Yeah, that's not Auburn football at all.
No, it's not. And I think when you mention the people that want to fire Gus, that is the number one complaint. You know what I mean? There's not that fire there. There's not that mesh that they would feel with like a Pat Dye or something of that nature that had the ability to gain what I would consider sovereignty to get people on the same page and to play that kind of Auburn football that people want to see, that tough, hard-nosed, physical football that Gus has been able to play at times. I mean, when you think 2013 and the ability to run the football, I mean, that captivated an Auburn fan base. When you look at 2017 and the way we manhandled Alabama and Georgia, that's Auburn football. And people are tired of seeing a team that looks at times soft. And as somebody who was a huge proponent of this team moving into this year, to kind of see how things have gone is a little bit disheartening. But I thought that we could get into kind of, what are the pros of keeping Gus, the cons, and what are, the pros of moving on and the cons of moving on to somebody else. And I think the number one thing is when you talk about moving on from Gus, and you said it, the people that want him gone, I think they've got the money. I really believe that.
I agree.
But it's, do they have the guy that's going to be transcendent, that's going to raise the level of Auburn? So if you look at a situation like Georgia, when they identified that Kirby Smart was going to go to South Carolina, they had a 10-win Mark Richt, but they decided, you know what, we have to make a change within our program because we're not going to be the upper echelon if we don't. It took some stones to make the move. It took some money to make the move, but it was the right move. But they had Kirby identified as that next guy.
Right.
Do we have that? I mean, I think the consensus would probably be Mario Cristobal right now. And we can get into why or why not he should be a candidate here in just a minute. But that's the major thing, because if you don't, you run the risk of becoming Tennessee. You run the risk of becoming Florida State. And I don't want to hear any shit about, they hired Dabo Sweeney and he was a wide receivers coach. We need to hire T. Will and said that. Look, I love Travis. I think he's a phenomenal football coach. He's not ready to be a head coach. Okay, so firing Gus Malzahn and hiring Travis Williams is not an answer to this situation, not in the current state of the SEC West. So
I'll T. Will too.
No, I love him. I think he's phenomenal. I think he's going to be a great defensive coordinator at some point in his career and probably a head coach. But is he ready for that right now? No. So that can't be the answer to your solution. You have to go out and you have to find somebody that is ready to be that person that can step into this geographic footprint and recruit head-to-head with the big boys, because you're getting your backyard plucked by Saban, by Smart, by Sweeney. Dan Mullen's looking 5,000 times better down there in Florida. Lane Kiffin's starting to get his feet cemented down there at Ole Miss. Pruitt has recruited well at Tennessee. He sucks because he's stuck by his quarterback, which he should have moved off from a million years ago, and I think that's going to ultimately cost him his job. But he's been able to recruit at a higher level than Tennessee's been capable of in the past. So you have to pick somebody that's going to be able to come into this geographic footprint and be able to put a statement that Auburn is Auburn football and they're going to remain Auburn football and they're going to put that blue-collar physical footprint out there on the field. But like I said, if you move on to the wrong guy, you become Florida State. You become Tennessee, you become irrelevant. And you look at what those programs have become, and they're not even close to what they used to be. So you better be unified on who you're going to get, and you better know, that this person that you're going to sink this money into and you're going to invest in has the ability to get Auburn on the same page, because that's what's fractured these schools is you get different power brokers that want different guys, and then you get somebody in there that can't sell them on one unified vision. That's what made Pat Dye great, okay? He was able to get Bobby Louder to convince everybody else, sell out to me, sell out to my vision, sell out to what's going to make us are equal to the other side of the state. Give me what I need, and I will make it happen. And he delivered. You have to have a coach that can obtain that level of sovereignty, be able to sell his vision, and to get all the power brokers on the same page so that we're unified. Because right now we're not.
No.
We're divided behind the scenes to a degree.
I would say that Gus is divided behind the scenes just with his own staff right now, honestly.
I would completely agree with that. You don't have that sovereignty within the football complex. You don't have that sovereignty outside the complex. And that is the biggest deterrent probably to keeping Gus right now, is because of that lack of being able to be unified. Because if you're not all pulling in the same direction, it splinters, and you see it right now. And look, people talk about total control. Not every coach gets it. Dabo Swinney didn't even have that, okay? Not up until recently. All right, what he had was extreme sovereignty, though, where he would have the ability to get people on the same page. You know what I mean? You have to have that persuasive ability, that ability to fundraise, that ability to maneuver behind the scenes. Tuberville had that ability. Now, he didn't always have it. You know what I mean? He didn't have that supreme sovereignty, obviously, in 2003.
Right.
But he was able to obtain it. And Tommy had the ability to work behind the scenes with the people that he needed to work with.
Sure.
Had he not alienated one or two, you know what I mean, I think it could have been significantly different for him. But those are the reasons why you would keep Gus, is because right now he is competitive. He's not winning all the games, specifically against our rivals, that he needs to win. He's not winning the bowl games that we need to win. But he is winning, and you're right, he does beat the people that he is supposed to beat, with the exception of one or two every couple of years, like a South Carolina or a Tennessee.
Yeah. Which,
if you win South Carolina this year, you're 7-3 more than likely. And think about how much different that feels.
A whole world of difference. But you could also argue the Arkansas game could have gone the other way. The Ole Miss game could have gone the other way. So it's a tough call.
No question. It really is, Jay. It's a very, very tough call. But let's say you do make the decision. Everybody gets on the same page. They do fire. Okay, so the number one name that you got tossed out there was Mario Cristobal, and that's who I absolutely believe would be identified as probably the number one target. The people that say Gus beat him. Okay. All right, let's dive through this minutia a little bit. Gus did beat him head to head. Did he make some boneheaded calls in that game? Yes, he did. Was he in year 2 and Gus was in year 7? Yes. Okay, so you're talking year 2 of a guy getting his players into the system. Year 2 of a guy that was putting his thumbprint on that team and still building, you know what I mean, to have that type of mentality that he wanted to have, versus a coach that was in year 7 that had put his thumbprint, that had his players, you know what I mean, and knew what he wanted to do. Now, you can say one had Bo Nix, one had Justin Herbert, yes. But once again, it goes into, you know what I mean, everybody has to have some adversity within a football season, and how do they react to that? Well, Oregon had their adversity at the very beginning of the season. They overcame that to win the Pac-12 and to go to a Rose Bowl. All right? How do we react to it? We beat Alabama, and then we choked to P.J. Flett, you know what I mean, in a bowl game. You know, like, you can say whatever you want in that situation, but Mario is, without a question, a top 5 recruiting head coach. He has had top 5 or top 10 recruiting classes in the last 3 years. There's no question he can come in if Auburn will give him the money to build a staff, and I have no reason to believe that they wouldn't, because they've done it for Gus, to build a staff of top 5 recruiters and good coordinators. And he could walk right into the door and put Auburn in a better position on the recruiting footprint than we currently stand right now.
It seems that way, yes.
And that's merely, when you talk about Matt Campbell is a hell of a football coach. I mean, he does more with less than anybody in the country, and I firmly believe that. I mean, you're talking about the same Iowa State that Mean Gene Sisek was, 2 and whatever and 3 and whatever. Matt Campbell's going 9-2 there. You know, he's either, 8-3 or whatever they're going to go this year. I mean, with supremely less talent than everybody else in the Big 12. Schematically, he doesn't do much. I mean, he does some different things from what we do, but we have personnel that can fit his system. I think he brings a mental and physical toughness, and I've once heard him say, you know what, I beat 5-star players with 5-star mentality and 5-star culture. Okay, if you're the kind of guy that loves that blue-collar mentality, Matt Campbell's your guy. But the problem with him is, you're talking about a guy that's traditionally from the Midwest. He's recruited the Midwest extremely hard. He's got some ties down to the state of Florida and Texas, but not really anything to this point that would make you salivate over what he could do. And he would have to hire some assistants with, Southeastern Conference ties. Would have to. I think the other guys that you've mentioned are Billy Napier, Tony Elliott, Hugh Freeze.
Maybe Hugh Freeze, yeah.
Look, listen, Freeze is a big name. He's a hell of a football coach. I think I said that on your show that I thought he was a better coach than Lane Kiffin. And I think he showed that this year at Liberty. I think the problem with Hugh is that it's too close right now to everything that happened at Ole Miss. I don't know that you could get enough people on the same page to hire him with what happened in his background there. With that said, can he come in and win next year? Yeah, I believe so. I think he's that talented football coach, but I just think there's some warts there that are going to prevent him from being able to get this job.
That's fair. I wonder.
Tony is a hell of a football coach.
Tony Elliott from Clemson. Recruiter.
Yeah. Yep, you got it. When you look at his background, and probably the recruiting model that he would bring from Clemson, which I'm in favor of, and I think will work at a place like Auburn. And he's watched a mentor of his in Dabo be able to take a place that's like Clemson that is very, very, very similar from an alumni base, from a booster base, everything, and be able to kind of move that and be the transcendentary piece to move them into a championship level team. I think Tony probably brings that, and the offensive philosophy is not very different from what we have. In fact, he worked for Chad and still runs a lot of what Chad does on offense.
Is that a minus or a plus?
Well, I think it's a plus from continuity, and I don't think necessarily that everything, schematically speaking, is what's wrong. I thought that Chad put us in a position to succeed today. We didn't capitalize. I mean, you could look at the overthrow to Stove in the corner of the end zone. Now, that was a surefire 7, and we ended up with 3.
Yes.
I think there were other times that we didn't take advantage. So, you know what I mean, by making simple checkdowns or other reads with the football. So I don't think that everything Chad doing schematically is all that bad. I do think that personnel on the offensive line has limited us as well as to what we can do. If you have a better, more athletic offensive line, I think our pass sets would be much better, and maybe we would have a better pass game. But be that as it may, I think he's adapted to what he's got, which is 5 guards on the offensive line.
Yeah.
And we ran the football effectively against the number 1 rush defense in the SEC. I mean, I think we put up over 200 yards rushing, correct?
Yeah.
So it's not like we had a bad offensive game plan. Our defense, realistically, was the unit that let us down more than the offense. I think the offense started to suffer when they had to go to more of a passing game there towards the end when they got behind.
Yeah.
But had the defense been able to keep, to give us more possessions, I think you would have seen Chad be able to capitalize today.
Yeah, again, it was a defense that was a bigger letdown today, which is unusual. I mean, that's not a problem that Auburn's been having a bunch. I mean, the Alabama game was kind of a mess too, but in general, the defense has been strong.
But the defense this year, more than any other year outside of the LSU game, has really, really, really they haven't performed to the level that they're capable of, and not to the level that Steele has, the standard that he set here. And I'm sure there's nobody that's agonizing over this more than Kevin. He's got great kids, but the lack of playmakers on the defensive line and the lack of size that we have in our linebacker unit, even though we have guys that are athletic, fast, and physical, has really hurt us this year. I felt like the secondary has probably been a step forward from last year, to be completely honest. But the front 7 has just been maligned either through injury or bad performance to this point, and we haven't gotten the most out of that unit. And for a guy that's getting $2.5 million a year, Kevin didn't earn that this year. And I'm not down on Kevin per se, but he didn't earn that money this year. We left a lot on the table, and you look at the last 3 games, Tennessee chewed us up on the ground, Alabama chewed us up, and now Texas A&M really ran the ball down our throat. Now, obviously, we get a break, and we're going to play Mike Leach, and we're not going to have a team that's going to try to run the football. We're going to be able to drop back in zone and probably, which is not what Kevin wants to do, but it's what we need to do, to drop back in zone and play coverage against a Mississippi State team that's not overly physical but is improving, as an overall football team.
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see what we do, but that, to me, the defense has been the problem the back half of the schedule.
But the Mississippi State game next week, I mean, let's say Auburn, I just don't see it's going to change anybody's mind. Like the guys that hate Auburn, the guys that hate Gus, the guys you and I both know who we're talking about, they're not going to be persuaded. Mm-hmm. If Auburn wins that game 56-0, they're not going to change their minds. They're still going to be pushing.
It's not going to change anything. Right. This game was the one that was going to change. If he was going to change anybody's mind or soften anybody, specifically that neutral crowd, this was going to be the game that was going to do because you were going to be the top 5 opponent. You had them in your house. You know what I mean? In a game that you needed to win for a little bit of program momentum, and to show that stability that you need from your head coach, showing that he can still win a big game. Because when you win a big game, at least every year, that gives your program something to sell. What's our big game this year? You know what I mean? LSU, Ole Miss, Arkansas. You know, what do you have as a program win this year? And I know this comes off as me sounding extremely negative. I'm not trying to be. I'm just trying to give a balanced argument for both sides.
Nobody would say you're negative.
Has done some good things.
Nobody would say you're negative, Jhead. You're just being realistic.
Right. Just you have to be realistic with how you're looking at this in its totality. And when you combine everything that specifically for those people that do not like, you know, that don't care for Gus, if one of them gone circa 2018, hell, probably before that, to be completely honest, one of them gone in 16 as well. Beating Mississippi State, which is a team you're supposed to beat, is not going to change their mind, because what they're talking about is look at our recruiting right now. Look at where we're headed as a program. Are we on the decline or are we on the rise? Or are we just mediocre, and keeping Gus would do nothing more than placate those people that just don't want to make a change? So that would be their argument, is that it is the betterment of the program to eat this money now as opposed to later and put yourself that much further behind the 8 ball.
It's an interesting spot. And, you know, Gouge is in a spot here. Alan Green's in a spot here. The neutral people on the board of trustees are kind of in a spot as well. So
you said it. I mean, Jay Gouge is not going to be here forever. And you know the kind of money. All right, so the optics of this are bad. Firing a football coach right now during a time period where you've lost $50 million already, you mean you've got hiring freezes across the board, is not a good look for Auburn University.
No.
Now, is it as bad a look as it would have been 3 weeks ago when South Carolina fired their head coach? No, because teams are starting to show, look, we'll make that money up next year because fan attendance is going to be that much better. The ability to raise money is going to be that much better with a new coach. And you know, just like I do, that when you bring in a new coach, the enthusiasm for the program and the ability to generate revenue is at an all-time high. So you do have that bounce back capability, but the optics of firing a guy, and you're going to have to pay him $11 million within 30 days of firing him, and then $2.5 million a year over the next 4 years for him to go away. And I don't know if Sexton was smart enough to get it structured where we don't have to, his pay doesn't have to be offset by any future employment. But my guess is the way, you know, Leaf was doing things, he took his ass to the woodshed, man, and probably has it. We're going to pay him $2.5 million, irregardless of what he does.
No, that would be bad news, brother.
I'm telling you, because most contracts are structured to where, you know what I mean, if they gain future employment, you offset whatever money you got to pay them. I believe, and I could be wrong on this, and you would probably need to put in a, you know, FOIA request to get a copy of the contract, but that Gus has got it ironclad. You're going to pay me that money regardless. It doesn't matter if I secure future employment or not. That money is owed to me.
Well, dude, Auburn took Sexton's first offer on this. Like, they just willingly accepted it.
Well, that's what happens when you don't have an athletic director. And look, for all of his faults, I fully believe this, that Jay Jacobs would have never, ever signed off on that contract, period.
Hey, brother, and you know I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah. I know you're not good, but are you satisfied? Look, as big an idiot as he was, and some of the mistakes that Jay made, there's no way he would have ever thought that was a good idea to accept that contract. So Leaf hung Auburn University with that deal, and everybody else, the other 3 power brokers that were involved in it, they just made a colossal mistake in the negotiations. They really did. Yeah. I mean, and look, people that want to bash Malzahn for taking that deal, you're crazy, okay? Because if I'm Gus Malzahn, I'm taking that deal. If you're going to offer me that kind of money, that's not me taking advantage of you. You offered it.
Yeah.
And I know there are people probably in the bunker and people that are watching your show that are completely and utterly pissed that I'm saying that.
No, you're pretty popular.
That's the God's honest truth.
You're pretty popular, Jhead.
That's the God's honest truth. If you're going to offer that money to anybody, they would be a fool not to take it, irregardless of what that does for their standing in your light as to whether or not they took advantage of the situation. Because he didn't.
I think it's on Leaf.
His agent.
It's on Leaf.
It's on Leith. It's 100% on Leith, and it's why presidents should not be making negotiations for football coaches. That's why you should have had an athletic director in place before you negotiated the contract extension.
Yeah, Dope did that from the chat. Says, wait, I thought Jay Jacobs gave Gus the extension. Jay Jacobs was a lame duck at that point. I don't think he was involved at all.
No, he was completely and utterly excluded to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah, and to the best of his knowledge, because that's what he kept saying, is I have nothing to do with this.
That doesn't surprise me.
Well, we got ourselves a little bit of a conundrum here, Jhead, though. This is a sticky situation right now. This is really sticky because it's tough. You know, in 98, we knew it was going to happen. When Chiswick went down in 12, we knew it was going to happen. This is like you're in that middle area, you know what I mean, where you don't want to be.
No, you don't, because you're winning just enough probably to stay employed, but you're losing enough to fall behind your rivals to the point that it's going to start to really impact your roster if you don't make a change at some point. Specifically, if you think that the product that you've had over the last 8 years is what you're going to have moving forward. And listen, Gus does some really great things. Let's not pretend that he doesn't. He does some phenomenal things. He's got great kids. He's got a clean program. He wins games that he's supposed to win. He's never had a losing season at Auburn. Okay. He does a lot of good things for Auburn, and he's a good man. Okay. But do you want to be a championship level program? Or do you want to be somebody that's in the middle of the pack? That's what you have to make a decision on. And look, I think Gus can be championship level at times. Okay. And he shows that he can make a run every 4 years or so. Is that what you want as a football team moving forward? And that's where you're at. And I'm not saying that, you know, I know this sounds like I'm really arguing that Gus needs to be fired. I'm not. Okay, because I want to be pragmatic here, because it is a shit ton of money that you have to pay out to ask him to walk away and to sit at home. Okay, for somebody who hasn't had a losing season. But I think the people that want to fire Gus see it like that. That do we want to be mediocre? Do we want to beat Alabama, you know, at home every other couple of years?
Yeah.
Or do we want to go to toe with the person across the state and win at least every other year? Do we want to be in championship contention, true championship contention, not just championship contention in the SEC West, but I'm talking about playoffs? Do you want to elevate the overall state of the program? Because that's what it took, and it took a gamble. But when you brought Bruce Pearl in here, you made a statement. You know what? I'm no longer going to be at the basement. I'm selling out to a guy that I know knows how to build and knows how to build within the SEC. And, yeah, we're going to take a chance on him. And look how it's paid off. Now, obviously, there are the detractors that would say, you know, hey, it's paid off with us being on NCAA probation. Well, I would also say that the person that got Bruce in hot water right now, he didn't even really want on his staff. That was forced down his throat by Jay Jacobs. So, once again, one of Jay's blunders.
Hey, we had a person in chat. Excuse me, Jhead. We had a person in chat want to know your thoughts on Billy Napier, just kind of as a candidate.
Look, Billy's a phenomenal football coach. I don't know that he's ready for a program like Auburn. But if you talk about the things that you want out of a football coach, you should be measured on various sets of criteria: leadership, vision, organization, the ability to recruit. Billy meets all those criteria. There's not a more organized, detail-oriented guy than Billy Napier. And he's a phenomenal recruiter. And he's done it at multiple schools. It's not like he's just been at Alabama pulling in studs, where it seems like relatively like part of the machine. You know, he was doing it at Clemson before it was popular to do at Clemson. He was landing guys like Taj Boyd. He was landing guys like C.J. Spiller, you know, when Tommy Bowden was the coach there.
Damn.
So this was before Clemson hit it big, when Billy was making his name on the recruiting trail. So he knows what he's doing from that standpoint. Offensively speaking, I think he runs a pretty balanced offense. I think he needs to give up play calling to move to a Power 5 school. He needs to bring in an offensive coordinator that he can trust to run his system, just because there's so many other things that you need to do at that level to be successful. So that would have to be something. And then you would need to see who he could bring on his staff, because he's coming from a relatively small school. I know he's a very loyal guy. He's got some guys on that staff that he would want to bring with him. But he's got some very deep SEC ties, and I think he'd probably be able to put together a really quality staff. So I think Billy should be considered. Do I think he's the front runner? No. Do I think he would be a bad fit? No, I do not. because you're talking about a guy that's got ties in recruiting to Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Louisiana, that 500-mile radius that you want to be in, where you're going to recruit year in and year out and put your stamp on your program with kids from those areas.
Remember, he's from Cookeville, Tennessee, so he's actually from Tennessee.
From Tennessee. I think he played high school football in the state of Georgia, though. I think he moved from Tennessee to Georgia while he was either in middle school. I know his father's very heavily connected in the state of Georgia from a high school coaching standpoint.
Yeah. Murray County. He played at Murray County, and then he played college football at Furman, I believe.
That's right. Played college football at Furman. And, great guy from everything that I understand, and a hell of a football coach. So, no, do I think he's the number one choice? I don't. Do I think he'd be a bad fit at Auburn? Absolutely not. I think he'd be a really great fit, and somebody that should be considered, and probably somebody in that top 5 candidates that me and you just discussed. And from a recruiting standpoint, he's much more of a fit than a Matt Campbell.
Yeah, Matt Campbell to me is out of place geographically at Auburn, so for me it's probably not quite great, but Cristobal with his ties down this way, and Alabama, and same for Napier and Clemson for him too as well.
No, I agree. When you're talking some of the guys that we've just discussed, whether it be Freeze has original recruiting ties, Napier has really good recruiting ties, Elliott has good recruiting ties, Mario's the best recruiter out of all of them at this point. And he's run 2 different programs, and that's probably what puts him above everybody else right now. But then another guy, Luke Fickle is an elite recruiter. He's run his own program up in Cincinnati. He's recruited the Southeast. He's not necessarily probably a top-tier candidate, but you're talking about somebody that runs smash-mouth offense and is a tough physical defense. If there's going to be somebody that's going to come outside the footprint that you're going to bring in as a head coach, I think it'd be Luke Fickle more so than it would be Matt Campbell. Campbell's just a name that I have heard, and I know you've heard, is probably a potential solution there at Auburn.
Yeah. There's some good options out there, though. I mean, the more I think about it, Cristobal's, come on, he's been an awesome recruiter down here, and same for Napier, so those are 2 guys. But again, and you spent the first 20 minutes of your call explaining this is not a slam dunk. The guys that dislike Gus are going to have to get a lot of people swayed to their side, and I just don't know if those people care. Not necessarily they don't care, but they don't see – they look at this team and they go, this team's not on fire. This team's not ruined. This program doesn't stink. Like, we remember 98, and this is nothing like 98. This is nothing like 2012. What's the deal? And they're going to have to convince them. They're going to have to convince them.
They are. They're going to have to sell them, and they're going to have to let them know that the apathy that's starting to instill within the program is going to permeate, and it's going to cause a downturn like 2012. So why not jump in front of the curve when you can and make a move now, as it might be more advantageous since you've still got some talent in your program. That would be the argument that they're going to have to make. But once again, you're making that argument to non-football people. So will it take? That's what you don't know.
I don't think those guys will be extremely expensive either. You have to pay Cristobal a pretty good amount, but not more than Gus. Gus gets paid a ton of money.
No, you could easily give him Gus's contract, or probably even a little bit less. And from what I understand, he wants out of the Pac-12. It's a lose-lose situation out there. That conference is losing money big time. Mario's only being paid, I think, $2.6 million a year. His staff gets significantly less. And even though Oregon is one of the, more financially stable programs there on the West Coast, and they have phenomenal facilities, they don't have SEC level money. And he knows it. Now the question is, does Texas come up and then do they pursue him? Does he feel like Auburn is committed enough to football to give him what he needs to be ultimately championship, level competitive? Those are the things that you don't know. And those are the things that the people, if you do make that decision, you better sell out.
Jhead, this has been an incredible call, man. Do you have anything on basketball you want to mention before you go? Because I don't want to keep you all day.
No, you're perfectly fine, man. Basketball, I think we have a really young team. I think we have a lot of great young talent on this team. Don't be surprised if we lose a few more games that we should probably win just on talent alone, just because of the level of experience and the fact that we're not playing with a proven point guard. Look, I love what Justin Powell has done, and if we could move him off the ball to the 2 or let him combo, it would make us so much better. And then you could continuously play Flanagan and Devin at the 3 as opposed to having them moonlight at the 2. So I think this team will get a lot of experience this year. I hate that we are going to have to go through what we're going through from an NCAA standpoint, but it is better to eat it now. And listen, people need not get frustrated over this. I think everybody knew once the sanctions came down against Oklahoma State, Auburn was going to have to end up doing something similar. I think the thought process leading into that was, okay, we sat 2 guys, we paid some recruiting penalties. You know what I mean? We forfeited what we need to forfeit at this standpoint. But when you saw it was the stance that the NCAA took against Oklahoma State, and everybody wants to cry about, Kansas and Arizona and LSU. Look, their time's coming. I promise you. The NCAA is not forgiving anything. Those schools are about to get ringed. It's better for us to pay the piper now, get this over with, lose a scholarship or 2 if that's what's going to happen. Maybe have Bruce suspended a handful of games, whatever it's going to be. Eat it now. Let him continue to build towards the future because you see what's coming in, and then just stand back. Okay, because if we get a point guard with this level of talent, you're talking about another Final Four team in a year or so.
Yeah, I agree. I love the way this team's going. And actually, people look at the team and they go, man, they're 2-2. I don't know. Dude, I'm more encouraged with this basketball team than I was a month ago. I cannot believe how advanced these freshmen are. It's unbelievable to me.
I completely agree. And I think, what is as impressive to me as anything is watch the maturation of, a Jalen Williams, watch the maturation of a JT Thor, and then envision what they can be when you put a traditional point guard on the floor and you're able to run 5 guys that can all stand behind 3, drive, do everything that Bruce wants to do in that flex offense offensively. Good God, man. It's going to be unfair what they're going to be able to do in a year. And I don't know what Shariq's future is. Before anybody asks in the chat, I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen as far as that's concerned. And I know you've got contacts on it, and you can't talk about everything that's involved as far as that goes. But Auburn's playing it smart right now. I can assure everybody of that. They're doing the right things here. Rich McGlynn is not the bad guy that everybody wants to make him out to be. Okay? We're going through the process. Things are being handled appropriately, and I think in due course, things will play out as they should.
All right. Jhead, that's an incredible call. That's the longest call I've ever had. 32 minutes you've been on the line. 32 solid minutes of nothing but good stuff, man.
Well, I'm glad to talk to you anytime, Jay. Hope the chat goes well the rest of the time. I know everybody's a little bit fired up today, but I hope they'll calm out. It's the holiday season. Relax. Things will play out as they're supposed to over these next couple of days. We got a game against Mississippi State, and then National Signing Day is coming up, and I'm looking forward to joining you guys at Voodoo Wings here in 2 weeks.
That's what Jay Lee was saying. We're going to have you on the show. It's going to be badass, dude.
I'm looking forward to it, my man.
All right, bro. Thank you, Jhead.
No, thank you, Jack.
Bye-bye.